I want to start off with the good news, right? When we launched Unite Against Fascism, and we faced the British National Party, or the British Nazi Party, we faced an organisation that was in the ascendancy in 2004. It had 12 councillors, it went on to get 2 other MEPs, it got well over 2 million votes if you include UKIP. Actually, it was an organisation which I think people felt that couldn't be stopped. And in fact, some of our opponents said it's because people had felt that too much had been given to multiculturalism. I want to read the tweet that Nick Griffin put out in the last European election. He tweeted this. He said, "We have been hammered." He goes, "The same as everyone else. No surprise, no disgrace." And I think what we have to understand is that was good news. And the reason why it was good news was because I think because they had won 2 Euro seats, because they'd been in that position, they actually began to build up something that began to produce a threat, I think, to everyone in terms of building a serious fascist party. In fact, not only did they lose their seats, they lost their seat in Burnley Council. Now, I don't know if people remember in 2002 when they started winning those seats inside Burnley, they said it's somebody where they were going to be able to build and continue to build, and they lost their feet. So actually, officially, Burnley is now Nazi-free. So is Amber Valley. So's Rotherham. Rotherham's now Nazi-free. And I remember going up there, and people said, "You don't understand. It's an old steel city. People have been disappointed. They're always going to go to vote. They're always going to go to vote Nazi and support it." And it's important that we remember that, because there was deep pessimism around that time about whether you could stop them or push them back. And I won't forget Newcastle and Tyneside as well. They've been pushed back there to getting 4% after getting 30% votes in many of the people. And Wales, they've been annihilated in Wales because of the work has been there. But there's been an argument about what actually did them in. Obviously, people had voted Labour at that particular time in order to push them out. But I would argue something else happened. That there was a mobilisation against the Nazis in those particular areas, not over 1 year, but over 3, 4, 5 years, exposing them for what they are. And actually, Nick Griffin, when he went on Question Time, I remember being told by the BBC, he's a major politician. Now, according to their own votes, according to an inside person, I was told by Searchlight that they had an inside person in their in one of the elections for Nick Griffin, that he couldn't even get his own party members to vote for him, and that he'd actually rigged that election in order to make sure that he continued being the leadership. And I think that's an important thing for us to celebrate, and that starts off by being the good news. Now I've come back to some of the bad news. I was invited to the European Parliament meeting to discuss what was going across inside Europe, and they simply gave me a list. They said there was the Alliance for European National Movements, the National Alliance in Italy, the Alliance for the Future of Austria, the Danish People's Party, the German People's Union, the National Front in France, the Austrian Freedom Party, the Norwegian Progress Party, Movement for a Better Hungary, or Jobbik, Northern League, and it went on and on and on. And they said the list had gone up by 30%. Not only that, as we've seen with people like Golden Dawn, some of these people have been able to get into office. And there's 3 forms that it's actually taken. I think you've had open Nazi organisations like Golden Dawn. You've had organisations like Geert Wilders that are racist or nationalist populists that build up the kind of basis for fascist and racist groups. And you've had the kind of Euro-fascists that have come in the form of Marine Le Pen. And if you look at a vote inside the French elections, I think that sent shockwaves through people. And it's important that we understand what we're involved in now. I think it's important that we recognise that, but we're not complacent about the danger of those organisations beginning to have to take place. There's a man called Matthew Goodwin, who's a writer on that, and when he was asked why the BNP or the EDL, why they're facing such opposition, he said it's because of British decency. And that's what you can explain the Greek organisation, they're not British. Right? I mean, the rise of the Front National, they're not British. I don't believe that's a real explanation about why we've had the growth of fascism. In the background of the crisis that we've had, we've seen these organisations come forward in terms of being. And part of the reason why they've been able to grow, I think there's been how I call it a racist arms race between some of the leadership. You know, a lot of the arguments around racism have been endorsed by some of the people that lead. Angela Merkel. We've had people like David Cameron attack multiculturalism. But I want to focus a little bit on Sarkozy, because I think Nicolas Sarkozy has been the most racist president they've had inside France in terms of modern days. He's dismantled and attacked the Roma, and I think one of the things that's happened with the growth of racism is that you've had a kind of new form of racism, if you like, around Islamophobia, has actually opened up greater attacks on other people. I don't know if people saw Nicolas Sarkozy's visit to Africa, where he said the problem in Africa was the African man had never taken part inside history. And it's reported in this month's ISJ that one of the things that one of the impacts of Sarkozy, I think the impact has been able to raise arguments, right-wing racist arguments, that has actually given fertile ground to people like Le Pen. You see that actually takes the policies, some of the policies that he put forward that were directly copied from Marie Le Pen. When the Front National inside France raised the argument about halal meat, it was the government, Sarkozy's government, that went on to say that it's got to be labelled. Halal meat has got to be labelled and identified to people. When inside the town there was a women's only swimming bars moment, it was Sarkozy's UMP that said that there shouldn't be segregated swimming. It was against the values of the Republic, and they should employ men to teach women how to swim. I think it's still a bit weird, that whole thing about watching people, and that they should open the window so people could look in at the women swimming. I've got my ideas about what's wrong with Sarkozy just from those things. But the real problem was it became a national cause célèbre inside France. In fact, if people remember Strauss-Kahn, he turned around and said, I'm against segregated swimming, it's not in the Republic. Now, he's got problems of his own on sexism. But what you saw was the impact of Sarkozy's argument actually allowed and opened up the arguments to rights. In this country, there's a man called Enoch Powell who spoke about rivers of blood. And that opened up the door for the National Front. And a process like that has been happening across Europe in terms of people openly blaming the crisis on the dispossessed, the Roma, and using racism as a tool to divide them. I'm not arguing that they're fascist, but I think they've opened up with their attacks on Muslims the ground in order to put those views forward. And I think one of the strategies that fascists have done is that Euro-fascist strategy. We've seen that Nick Griffin tried to do that inside Britain. The problem was, I think he was confronted. When he went to Question Time, the mask was ripped away from where he stood. And I think it's an important strategy that's put forward, that we never allow Nazis or fascists to be able to present themselves as normal organisations. And the media play a very, very important role in terms of the way they're presented. I did a phone-in inside Bristol about the EDL going to Bristol. And they said, what's wrong with good, honest English folk trying to walk down the street inside Bristol and celebrate their uniqueness? Why is that a challenge to culture? But I said, the guy who's doing it, a man called, there's a guy called Michael, he's unfortunately Michael Collins, who's one of the organisers there, 47 counts of attacks on people. Not only that, what do they call it when you're charged? He's been bound over because he was one of the people that was involved in attacks on mosques. And it's not just one. Last week, somebody went to jail because they were involved in an attack on a mosque. In Stoke, a soldier, ex-soldier, tried to blow up the mosque by putting a pipe, an explosive pipe. And it goes on and on and on like that. And every time you meet the police, they say, we've met these people, we talk to them, we listen to you, we listen to them. And then you sometimes wonder, why are they getting so cosy with these people in terms of the way that they've been presented. The BBC gave the person organising in Bristol 4 times on the on the radio and also on the television. When we asked to go on there, they said you can go on there on Thursday. Now, you know, I think what that represents is in terms of allowing them a level of respectability, and that's what the Euro-fascists have tried to build on. You know, Griffin said that he was copying Le Pen, that the way that the Front National had been able to grow was by covering its tracks, by saying we have to remove ourselves from presenting ourselves as a fascist organisation. And Radio 4 put Marine Le Pen on the radio that by saying, actually, it's different. The old fascists have gone. In fact, the Daily Mail recommended a vote for the Front National on the grounds that they weren't Nazi. And that's going back to the old territories of hooray for the black shirts. In other words, they've been given quite open doors. And I think this has been part of the thing that's actually contributed, if you like, to their growth. I think when we talk about, I want to just go through what we think is fascism, because sometimes when I was on the radio, I was saying that these people aren't just racist, they're actually fascist, what they want to do and what is their aim. And I think when we talk about it, we talk about it, if you like, in a scientific way, if not to be so pompous, because maybe because I'm in a lecture theatre, I've decided to raise the question. But fascism is not, you know, fascists can use racism. Hitler and Mussolini did use racism and anti-Semitism, but it's not a necessary part of their key way of organising. They use it in order to hold their cadre together. So in other words, when you look at an organisation like the EDL, their virulent Islamophobia is used to hold the key. It's used to hold together their organisation. I think it's interesting when you look at the EDL. One of the things that's interesting about it is the speed at which it developed from when it announced itself. I mean, it went from they claimed 5 or 6 people organising around a website into claiming to have 73,000 members. When they claim not to be fascist, a lot of us that have gone on their demonstrations, you might have noticed that they seek Heil, they use the same kind of, if you see BNP members organising with them. But I just want to go back to the question of the nature of fascism. One of the examples is if you look at an organisation like Golden Dawn, that has grown up inside Greece. And I would say it characterises a kind of organisation that is openly fascist. It's not hiding that it's fascist. It's not trying to present itself as a respectable organisation. It presents, the leader of the organisation wears a cross ring that is reflective of the old fascism. But when you look at the nature of these organisations, they've got a definite social basis. The basis of their organisation is made up of the small proprietor, the middle class. And if you look at Golden Dawn, 60% of its organisation is made up of small proprietors, unemployed members, and it's got security forces plus criminals, which is not a surprise to me at all, that they have both of those people in the same organisation. And what they aim to do, as Trotsky put it, is that they aim to use brutal force in order to smash all democratic organisations in society. They're not trying to do what the police or the army do. What they want to do is destroy the entire basis of our society, or of any kind of any individual organisations. Trotsky said they want to smash every independent proletarian organisation by breaking every right and every institution. In other words, they try and break the unions, but they want to go further by destroying the individual voluntary organisations. So Hitler destroyed he got rid of the Boy Scouts, and he got rid of all some other religious organisations. But one of the things that's clear is that you only have the sudden growth of these organisations unless there's a big, massive social crisis. So in Greece, when you look at Golden Dawn, one of the biggest votes they had was in 1987, which was 0.11%. Now, if you look at their vote now going from 7% and having 21 deputies, it mirrors the same type of crisis that took place inside the 1930s. In other words, fascism is a product of despair, is a product of when the society can't hold together the centre of it. So you see organisations start to grow up that threaten and break people. We were told that if the EDL, so if Nazi organisations are put on television, it will expose them. And if you've exposed them, that is the way to stop them. Now, I don't know if people saw what happened when one of the leaders of the Golden Dawn went on television and he slapped 2 women. And I expected, well, we were told by Inside the Guardian, that's it, he's been exposed by PR and inside the media. His actual vote went up. The actual vote for the organisation went up. And one of the reasons why I think we should stick to a policy of no platform, and why they shouldn't get any chance of being on the airways, is they use that in order to build and strengthen their organisation. So we were right to try and stop them from going on Question Time. But one of the things that Trotsky pointed out is that when they build fascist organisations, that they are made up of the middle class. And in our analysis is that in our society, although the differentiation that takes place in our society between workers, middle class and the ruling class, is that the ruling class run society. We've seen it with the bankers, haven't we? The laws don't apply to us. You see it with Cameron, or the Queen, the establishment, if you like. They run society by controlling the way that they're presented. But when people are driven into a frenzy, as Trotsky put inside his book, they can go in any particular direction. So you have a group of people, particularly like the middle class, that are hit and hammered by crisis, turn to organisations like Golden Dawn. And that's what happened inside the 1930s and the 1920s with Mussolini and with Hitler. You saw small groups of individual people, peasants, who you'd class as an intermediate class, turn towards fascist organisation. And Trotsky said that the aim of Hitler put it this way, he said, we want to make the small man feel like he's part of a mighty dragon. And that's the reason why, you know, the way that these mass organisations of Nazi or fascist organisations, they try and give people that feel that they haven't got any kind of control in society, they try and draw them to an organisation that acts as something that can pull them together. Because if you're middle class, or if you're owner and you've been crushed by big business, as some of the small owners have been inside France, these people feel powerless. The time they feel powerful are when they're marching on the streets, or when they're intimidating people. To be honest, I always accepted this theory, but it's not until I saw it inside Stoke that I understood what it meant. In Stoke, we called a demonstration. It was a decent demonstration, but unfortunately, the Nazis outnumbered us. About 3,000 of them, and they included people like soldiers and stuff like that. And I remember the police saying to me, we're going to have a difficult moment here. And what happened was, these people burst through the police lines, and then they marched down to what they described as the ethnic area. They attacked mixed race couples, and they attempted to try and charge down to the mosque. But when you looked at their faces, they were enraged. In fact, they were going, give me back my England, as if they owned it in the first place. And really what you saw there was the pressure on people. I'm not saying it was a justification, but you saw the squeeze on people. And that's why when you look at what's happening in Greece, where they attack and murder migrants, but they also then go and attack LGBT groups. Now we've had 96 demonstrations against the EDL, and our principle has always been about building a united front. In other words, bringing together people. Trotsky argued in the 1930s that if you bring together the major if the revolutionary forces join with other groups, particularly social democrats, they would be able to have broken what Adolf Hitler did, because the social democrats had 6 million votes, and the KPD in Germany had 2 million votes. If they brought them together, they'd been able to break the part of the back of where the Nazis stood. We shouldn't forget that they had 400,000 400,000 shock troops in terms of in the SA and the SS. So part of breaking them would have been to mobilise on two levels. One, to bring together, to give people confidence that they can stop them politically, but also that they would have to stop them marching and developing on the street. I'm not arguing that we're in the 1930s where you've got mass fascist organisations begin to break through, but I think we are starting to witness under capitalism, you're starting to see a polarisation taking place in which you can see fascist organisations growing. And I mentioned places like Hungary, where I think that Jobbik and Hungarian Guard are fast approaching a situation in which they're attacking on that basis. But I think we need to examine what has worked and what hasn't over the question of stopping the EDL. And I think one of the significant reasons why the EDL are not in a primary position as they were at Stoke was because they've been stopped and challenged along the way. Now, I'm not going to argue that all the demonstrations have been great, because I mentioned Stoke, and I won't even mention Blackpool. You know, they mobilised 1,500, and it was a very difficult day. The point of looking at how you build a united front at the moment in terms of what Unite Against Fascism is, and I think we've been successful in terms of stopping their rapid growth. The EDL expected to reach 80 to 90,000, and they said that they were going to launch something called the British Freedom Party off the back of what they did inside Luton. Now they've still got been able to mobilise between 1,500 to 250 people in the street, but I don't think they're anywhere near what they were like in 29, when actually I think they were building rapidly into a situation where they were going to be a serious threat. Certainly, that if you think about Newcastle, when those people mobilised, they mobilised 1,000 people. We mobilised 1,500. We've had demonstrations in which we were able absolutely to outnumber them and stop them. But we've also had demonstrations where I think we've absolutely broke some of the way they were going forward. I think Tower Hamlets on the 3rd of September in Tower Hamlets. It's worth examining what happened inside Tower Hamlets, because I think we're going to have to get hold of when I talk about the complexities, that when the EDL say they come to town, everybody supports you. It's like in Waltham Forest, they've had very, very good meetings. Yeah. But as the EDL come closer and closer, there's actually political pressure begins to build up. There's an argument that comes from people like Hope Not Hate that say that one of the things you can do is ignore them. If you ignore them, they'll go away. In fact, in Bristol, I think the leader of the Liberal Council said, on that day I'm going to turn my back. Obviously he's got no sense of self-preservation. If you see somebody who says they want to attack you and they say, I'm going to turn my back on you, then actually what happens is they trample over you and they win. And I think what we've had to do is we've had to pull together the spirit of the United Front in terms of pulling people together to say that we oppose you. We've done it in two ways. One, it has been also organising on the streets, but also politically trying to isolate and expose who the EDL are. So far from them before, when they went to town, they said we were pro-LGBT, we're anti-racist. In fact, there's a recent study of the EDL that says that they've got 3 black people in their organisation. 3 black people and one guy called Abdul who's a Muslim, who's from Glasgow, whatever it is, who they say got mental health problems. Right? But nevertheless, it's not the same as, you wouldn't exactly say, if you're in an organisation which claimed to have 80,000 members and you said we're multiracial, right, you wouldn't expect them to have as little as 3. But what they've actually been able to do is they try to present themselves. Their strategy was actually quite clever. They said they were pro-women. They had an angels march. Except for no angels but demons turned up, if you ask me. And they didn't have very many women on that demonstration. But tactically, we had to learn how to deal with it. But when I'm talking about building and fighting the EDL now, the base of what happened in Tower Hamlets was a strength that we had locally, both politically and inside the trade unions. The trade unions have been the main bastion, I believe, in terms of opposing fascism in this country. And actually socialists and revolutionaries developing links with them have been critical in being able to stop them. Plus, pulling on the local Muslim community. But I think there's enormous pressure put on the local Muslim community not to be part of the organisation. They have dedicated police officers given to them. In Bristol, they're spending £330,000 on liaison. I don't know what that means actually. Do you mean I just spent £330,000 a year? So I think it's where, you know, but basically I call it bribing. And in terms of, we'll fund you if you oppose the demonstration. So sometimes what you have is you're able to break that by bringing people together, and then sometimes you're not able to break that logjam. In Tower Hamlets we broke the logjam, and actually what that meant was we were able to have the demonstration. But we shouldn't forget, although the mayor led the demonstration, he also turned around and said we should call it off, because he said we've been able to stop them by banning them. And then, actually, to be honest, there wasn't a coalition. You felt like you were isolated the local organisation was on its own, and you had to expand and begin to build. And that demonstration, I think, they said it was devastating to the EDL. It was devastating because the workers closed the tubes and they couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't go to Sainsbury's and they couldn't do that. And I think it worked perfectly in terms of they didn't put one foot inside Tower Hamlets. And actually what they wanted to do was to prove that they could intimidate a Muslim community and repeat what, in other words, step into the same footsteps as Cable Street. And I think that was an effective thing. I also think what happened in Brighton, this so-called March for England with the EDL, right? Well, what it was it was one of the worst days of my life. I had to hide behind my wife. And I'm good. We want more days like that. We want more days where they have to turn around and hide. I think there was reaction to that. That's the reason why they've been attacking us up and down the country in terms of if they don't feel they can take to the streets, they do go to terrorist tactics. But I want to say that we've had three. So you have three types of demonstrations. You have all three groups. And I think we have to. What we can say is that we've stopped that kind of forward march. We haven't knocked them out, by the way, because I still think that in Dewsbury, in Rochdale, over the grooming issue, it was incredibly difficult because everybody ran away when you said, would you march with me? Because it wasn't seen as marching against the EDL. The media had actually whipped up an atmosphere where actually what you were arguing was you were arguing for women's oppression, which you weren't. And I think that's been followed up by the report that's taken place, I think, on children's homes and abuse is a disgrace. Because although quite rightly it points out the abuse that's taken place of young women and men in the care system, it then concluded partly we have to stop the grooming groups. And I believe the grooming now is actually racially associated. And I think that if they look for the majority of assaults on young people, it's in the family. Yeah. Actually, that's the truth of it. And they've actually built up an atmosphere. I think that's partly put people on the defensive. There's a lot of people I've mentioned, Barnsley and various other places. And I think in that sense, we've been successful in terms of mobilising and bringing people together. I think there's been arguments that have taken place. We've argued tooth and nail that we have to involve the Labour Party. Now, involving the Labour Party, I'll be careful what I say because it's filmed, but we worked with Stella Creasy and various other people. In Barking and Dagenham, we worked with Margaret Hodge, because they're seen as the leaders of the social democrat parties. That's been hard sometimes, because I think there's been arguments with autonomists, and also even people that call themselves socialists to say you shouldn't have them on there because they're making cuts. They are making cuts, by the way, and we should fight when they make cuts. But part of the United Front is being able, as Trotsky said, bring people to strike together and being able to march separately. It doesn't mean that that we will not criticise over the cuts, but it does mean that when you want to stop the Nazis, you have to bring people together. I want to end up on something about our prospects for stopping the Nazis. And I want to start off by saying that the most effective way of stopping the Nazis is actually for the working class to fight back in an organised way. It's one of the heartening things that happened in Greece was after their 17 general strikes, the demonstrations that they called, supported by people in large numbers, in which they forced Golden Dawn to come off the street. And when we did June 30, when you looked on the blogs of the EDL, some of them said, I went on that march. But also they said that this is not a good time to call a demonstration because there's so much going on. In other words, they felt they weren't in the ascendancy, and them marching as a small group, they weren't going to be able to dominate. In other words, I think part of their building on despair is when there isn't an alternative set of politics that talks about hope and actually fighting back. They're trying to bring together that material that Cameron's produced in order to talk about smashing our society. I think it's important that we build a united front, but I don't believe it should be the same as a popular front. And what do I mean by that? In Bristol, we were asked not to march by the Muslim Council. We said we respected you, and we're going to go in there and march on Sunday, which is on a different day, but we are going to march. They are part of the struggle against racism, but we're not going to say that we shouldn't confront and stop the Nazis, even though there was a Labour councillor that put forward that. The final thing I want to say is that when we used to talk about fascism in the 1970s, the National Front was the only organisation in Britain. You didn't talk about the whole of Europe, small organisations in the position that they had the same effective force in terms of bringing together a force that would act as a battering ram to smash the working class. I think the stakes are incredibly high. When you see people hiding on Greek television and winning 21 votes, the question of what type of society we're going to live under, whether it's going to be austerity that drives people into that position, raises that question. And I think that part of the reason, I'm not a British nationalist by the way, but why is it that the Front National, or the National Front, have been broken in Britain? And this is not, by the way, this is not, as I said, I'm not a nationalist. This is not an attack on any comrades that come from countries in which the fascists are. It's not their fault. Right? But it is important to say that if you can bring the left together in a united front, you can break the way that the Nazis built. Martin Smith and I have been invited on various, I won't call them junkets because we have to work too hard to do that, to different places. And they ask us, why is Britain different? Why has it not had, we said we have had fascists, why have we been able to break them? And I think it's because we've done three things. We've always fought them when they've organised, but we've also argued why you can politically unite different groups to be able to do that. But I think at the heart of it as well is a question of a revolutionary party that has not just of fighting against fascism, but talking about changing the world that creates the fascist. And I think it's a shocking thing to say that after the Holocaust, after Hitler, after Mussolini, people didn't know in the 30s what was going to happen, but we do, that we're facing this again. This is not an accident of history. This isn't just, as somebody said about Breivik, that he's just insane. This is a combination of two things, those networks developing under the process of crisis, and there's a reason why we have to talk about changing our society away from that, a society that's not based on exploiting people, breaking people, pushing racism, Islamophobia, a society that's based on changing that. And I think when we look at that, I think that's important. Tony Cliff wrote in one of his books, he said, what was his worst nightmare? He said his worst nightmare was Nazis with nuclear weapons. That wasn't possible under the 1930s. You couldn't actually have that. But today, when you look at some of these people trying to get power, like Marine Le Pen and various other things, and actually they don't have a solution to what's going on, you have to say that you have to talk about an alternative system. And one of the reasons why you have to talk about an alternative system is because Hitler and Mussolini would never have come to power without the support of the ruling classes in their country. When they couldn't go forward, then they did that. Why is it in Greece you can slap somebody on TV and the police can't find you? They said he escaped out of the studio. Do you believe if you slapped a Tory who deserved it on national TV that you'd get out of the studio? You wouldn't get out of the studio. When we went on demonstrations and just said we're against the EDL, we were put in the back of vans. Yeah. And actually there's a connection between that. Part of the reason is that the way that the state works in terms of defending these people. I said every single time, on a lot of our demonstrations, we don't actually get to see the Nazis. We see the police. We see the state defending them and organising.
Yeah, my name's David. I lived in London during the time of the Anti-Nazi League. Now I live in Barcelona, where there's a worrying National Front type party that was growing over the last 10 years gradually, and people saying, ignore them, they'll go away. And about 2.5 years ago, some of us said, no, we won't ignore them because we need to do something to make sure they go away. We started building United Against Fascism and Racism in Catalonia, the region around Barcelona. We now have around 300 different organisations within that, including the whole union movement, the whole youth movement, the whole neighbourhoods movement, and SOS Racism, and a whole series of people. In November 2010, before we got going really, the fascists got 75,000 votes in Catalonia, 2.9% with 3% that have had MPs in the Catalan parliament. Last November, they got 10 vans paid for by European fascists going around Barcelona. They said they'd get between 6 and 9 MPs. they got the round figure of 0. We handed out what for us is a large number. We handed out 100,000 of these across Catalonia. In cities where they went, they found protests by Unity Against Fascism and Racism, even places we don't have organisations, but people went there and protested. They knew that this made a difference because the fascists didn't stop insulting us, accusing us, threatening to take us to court. So people who say it doesn't work, that shows it does work. Finally, because I probably don't have much time, that is not something that comes out of nowhere. That is because in Catalonia we have fairly strong organisation of the sister group of SWP in Lucha in Utah, and we were able to start that. We couldn't do it on our own, but it wouldn't happen without us. In Madrid, there's a problem of fascism, but our group is too small. In Valencia, there's a problem of fascism. We don't have an organisation. So something like that is essential to have the maximum forces, diverse and plural forces. That's what makes it a solid movement. But unless there's people starting the ball rolling, it won't happen. Because the fascists were growing in their hometown for 10 years, from 1 councillor to 4 councillors to 5 councillors. They're now the biggest group on that, second biggest group on that council. But in a hometown, if you like, their Barking or their Stoke, there was a demonstration about a month ago, a united demonstration against fascism for a local demonstration, 2,000 people, and it looks like finally we'll have a united group in that town. I think this model, united against fascism, can work everywhere. But the condition is to have a core prepared to start off in a non-sectarian way, but really fighting the fascists with unity.
Hello, I'm from Bristol. I'm part of We Are Bristol and a member of the SWP. Weyman's right about what's actually the massive pressure that's being put on the actual campaign in Bristol and the way that the police are actually facilitating a lot of what the EDL want to do. Some of the things that they've actually done is that one of the pubs that they're actually looking to put them in so they could get a couple of hours drinking before their demo is, they've refused to take them. They've actually visited that pub 4 times to put pressure on it to try and take them. They're still resisting at the moment, but the police are still putting pressure on so the EDL can have a little drink up beforehand. Some of the demobilising methods that they're actually using is they've attended our meetings, planning meetings. They've actually basically showed up at one of the local schools and asked the management what members of the NUT, actual teachers, are actually going to be showing up at the demo. They're putting this around the schools in Bristol at the moment to try and demobilise us. And I actually found out on Friday when I spoke to one of the solicitors that's going to be helping us on the day, they're actually going to be opening the courts on the Sunday after our demonstration for 24 hours to protest all protesters that are going to be arrested on the day. And the thing about We Are Bristol is it's a massive coalition of people in the city. We've got the Southwest TUC, Unison, Unite Health, PCS, NUT. We've got, community groups. Labour are on board. This isn't, some like mad anarcho-conspiracy of what we're actually trying to do. It's actually a really good united front. And they're actually trying to destroy it actively at the moment this week. And some of these people now are very angry, and we're going to push out over the next week to try and build the massive demo that we're doing. And one of the key things is that what I want to learn on the day, and I want to remember, is that when they come to town, Bristol is going to say one thing. The only word we want to hear from them is retreat. The only steps the EDL are going to take are backwards. And what we're going to say united in Bristol is fuck off, you're not welcome here anymore.
We're facing something so important, and they never asked for it, but I just want us to take one moment and just reflect for a moment on 96 demonstrations to stop the EDL and reflect on our comrades Weyman Bennett and Martin Smith, because of minutes about the implications of where we are not rooted. And that comes back at the end of the day to growing our party and growing our links and being inside of the class and creating the links between the social movements and the organised working class all throughout this country. That's the way we're going to make sure that we're rooted wherever we go. Because I pick up stuff, and I know comrades in here, contacts in here will pick up stuff all the time about what people are living with on the day-to-day, the reality of the filthy racist abuse that you're getting on the day-to-day, and the extent to which the police are accommodating that abuse. One patch that I know about where one guy who's had BNP daubed on his back door, he's got a list of 20 incidents of racism, and when he went to the police they said, we've got a list of 1. This is what they are decriming, they are disappearing what's going on. So it is up to us. And the other thing I want to talk about is how we stop ourselves from policing ourselves. And by that I mean, every time somebody gets stopped and searched, every time you go out and you get a load of shit on the street in terms of abuse, it's difficult not to take that inside of yourself and to make it feel that you need to be like that. And that is what we must not do. And I think the issue around the way in which Muslim sexualities are being attacked and what that might be doing in terms of turning inside of the identities of Muslim people as a whole, that their sexualities are somehow eroded. We've got lessons in history. Look what they did to black sexualities. When they lynched people, they cut off their sexual organs, and they did it deliberately to demonise a group of people. That's how they used it. They attacked sexuality in order to feed the racism. And we've got those lessons of history, we've got that writing, we've got to read it, we've got to use it. So the last thing I want to say is the privatisation process, that drive to atomise, individualise, decollectivise. Every time we stand together, every time we organise, every time we collectivise, we break that atomisation. And that's how we'll stop people policing themselves. That's how we'll stop the fear. Because at the end of the day, we are many, they are very, very few.
Comrades, my name is Sasha. I live in Hackney and I'm involved in the We Are Waltham Forest campaign, which has been set up to stop the EDL marching in Walthamstow on the 18th of August. We pulled together a very, very good coalition, and we've had a couple of very, very good meetings. One extraordinary public meeting of 130, 135 people across the spectrum of the different ethnicities of Walthamstow. But it was very, very interesting, that meeting, in two ways. The first was that there were two policemen came along as the meeting was assembling. And we had Zita Holborn on as one of the speakers. And the policeman came in and said, we just want to check that you're all safe in here. Which, well, yeah, exactly, it's a laugh. You know, I was at Bolton and the rest of it, you know, they were keeping me very safe there. And she said, well, what's the problem? You know, do you expect the EDL to turn up? And they said, no, it's not the EDL. We've been watching this place. It's a sort of multi-ethnic kind of community hall. And we suspect that there's people who want to introduce Sharia law operate from here. In other words, even a meeting that was being built to stop the EDL, they reversed it to have a go at Muslims. So we have nothing to expect from the police except racism and to facilitate the Nazis coming in. But there's another argument going on within We Are Walthamstow, and that is the argument that we have to exclude certain people on the logic that the Labour Party and the mainstream politicians are bringing in the cuts are responsible for increases in racism, therefore we cannot unite with the Labour Party. And we have this argument again and again with different political groups within We Are Waltham Forest. And we in the SWP put a counter-argument that we will link arms, that what we want on the 18th of August is a line, if you like. Everybody to one side of the line except the Nazis. The Nazis are on the other side, and we will chase them out of Waltham Forest. We'll make them afraid when they come back. So we want everybody who can be there to be there. You'll be welcome, and you will feel. We want the kind of buzz that we got in Tower Hamlets when those fuckers did not dare step into the East End of London. We want you there, but. The comrades were talking about how many demonstrations we've had against the EDL so far. I'm afraid there'll be more, and there'll be more not because the EDL are unstoppable. We know we can stop them. It's because as the crisis deepens, they're getting help, and they're getting help from the worst squad. What should be help from our side? I'm sick of hearing people talk about Enoch Powell on the bloody media as if he was some sort of genius. He was a nasty, squalid racist. I'm glad he's dead. I'm glad he didn't make 100. How dare! I'm sick of Ed Miliband coming coming out with rubbish attacking immigrants, that we got it wrong on immigration. You did not get it wrong on immigration. Get it right against racism. Join us against the racists.
Hi comrades, I'm Kate and I'm from Cardiff SWP. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the success we've had with UAF Wales. Because actually in South Wales, every time the EDL have come, they have not been allowed to march and we have stopped them every single time. Also have success when it comes to the elections, because actually in 2009 in the Euro elections across Wales, they got over 40,000 votes. These council elections in May, they were only able to stand 6 candidates and I think they only got 434 votes in the whole of Wales. The way we did this is that we have organisations, like we have UAF everywhere, not just, you know, when the EDL are coming, but all the time, just to make sure, you know, we're constantly there, constantly having meetings. And, you know, we go leafleting when we know that they're standing, and we make sure that we know what's going on. I mean, my father spends far too much time on the fascist websites so that we know exactly what they're doing and that we're prepared. And I think I just really want to stress the importance of having that organisation ready so that you're already prepared when they come to you, because they probably will.
A couple of months ago, I was asked to, no more than that actually, I was asked to speak at the European Parliament. And what was interesting about and why I wanted to go really, was a meeting to assess the scale of the fascist threat across Europe. And there's just one line from the report that I thought was just worth reading out. It just said the following: there are 2 countries in Europe right now which are seeing a decline in fascist organisation, whilst most other countries are seeing them rise. Those 2 countries were Spain and Britain. I want to argue why that might be the case. Because I don't believe you can look at factors that say that Britain's somehow different. I don't believe unemployment rates are any different in Britain or marginally different than they are in France. Migration isn't any different. The size of the Muslim population in France and Britain, etc., isn't any different. The only subjective factor I think that exists is the question of an organisation that names them fascists, stands on the streets and opposes them and beats them, and that's what we should be proud that we've done. But I have to be honest, I'm slightly worried about the kind of whipping up of the mood here. I'll tell you why, because I do too many, like Weyman, I do too many of these demonstrations. And you see, for every town hamlets, there's a fucking terrible one. For every town hamlets, there's a Blackpool. For every Dudley, there's a Stoke. For every Luton, well, actually there's another Luton. Quite simply. And I want to say why we have to be careful. Because first things first, there's no point in clapping unless you have a UAF group in your town and city that is rooted, that is a genuine united front that brings together trade unionists, religious organisations, community groups and anti-fascist activists. If you don't have that, you don't build it in the few weeks that you get told that the EDL are coming to town. So the urgency has to be, you have to build now in preparation for the future. But I tell you the other danger. You see, it's a danger of which Waltham Forest and Bristol both have to watch very, very carefully in the coming weeks, and so do other places. You have not got your demo done yet, so be very careful. I'll tell you why. It's just not true in Tower Hamlets, by the way, folks, that it all went upwards and onwards. Up until the very last day in Tower Hamlets, it was touch and go what side different people would fall down on. That's the truth of it. There were very, very powerful forces that first of all backed the coalition to defeat the EDL. And then once the EDL were so-called banned from Tower Hamlets, although they never were, then said we shouldn't march. We then had to come in and do mass community leaflet, and we spent the last week running around everywhere. We then created the pressure back, which forced those people back on board. And if you don't understand that, then you'll make a big mistake, because what the police will do, they have 3 phases to break us, and they will go right up to the wire, and it goes something like this. First, the police will go around in your town and city talking to every community and ask them to pull out from the demonstration. They will put huge pressure on the Muslim elders to pull from the demonstration. They'll put huge pressure on trade union leaders to pull. They will say it will be anarchists. they'll say that'll be violence. And if that holds them, they then go around the other way. They then use PVE money to terrorise young kids to keep them off the demonstrations. They terrorise their family, they organise day trips. You can't go on a day trip in Tower Hamlets most of the time. Suddenly when the fucking EDL turn up, there's coaches pouring out here, there, everywhere to take them to every lovely fun fair around in the country. That's what happens in Stoke and all the rest of it. And third, if that fails, they then come to what they're doing in Bristol. And we have to be very careful in Bristol, because when you start announcing to the press you're going to open up courts on the Sunday, don't tell me you're not going to create a climate of fear where people are genuinely scared. And if you don't understand that, they're going to keep breaking us time and time again. So you need a coalition that understands where it's going and understands the political pressures that are going to come on it, because if we get that, then we can take this movement forward. If we don't, they will break us. And they have broken us in some towns. We have to be honest about that. They have broken us. It was brilliant in Luton last few months ago, but there was no one local. We can't just come as troops from the outside. We have to win where we are. We're not a roving army. We're not like the EDL. We have to build locally to beat the EDL. If we don't do that, actually they can come back. They've come back once before. They can come back again. So the warnings are there. Don't be complacent. Build now.
Hello, my name is Monica. I'm from Norway, Oslo. Yesterday I was in a pub down the road, and I talked to a man. He said proudly that he was a national socialist, that he was thinking the Muslims are destroying England, and he was trying to convince me that I'm a socialist, he's a national socialist, it's almost the same. This will never happen in Oslo, or this has never happened to me in Oslo, and still we got Anders Breivik. We don't have strong fascist organizations, and still we got the terrorist attack that killed 77 people of the Labour Party and the Labour youth. And this shows how important it is to fight against Islamophobia and to fight against fascist organizations in Europe, because he was getting his inspiration from this environment, from the EDL. And I'm so happy that the Socialist Workers' Party make this connection. It's a very important connection. What I want to say is about the need for organization. Like after the terrorist attack, it's been a very, very special year in Norway. On one hand, we have huge possibilities for the left. We have a lot of nice things going on from the ground, a lot of good examples. I will give you some. And on the other hand, we don't really have any change in the Norwegian politics. The Labour Party was attacked, but they are also in government. And amazingly, they still have the same strategy like before the terrorist attack, that they want to compete with the right-wing populist Progress Party about being hard on asylum seekers, hard on immigrant politics, to criminalize asylum seekers. Still, they think that they can win the votes by having this approach, which really underlines that we don't have strong enough organization. Because what we have, you have, for example, Breivik was saying that he hated children's song about Children of the Rainbow. Tens and thousands of people immediately go out in the street to sing this song. We have the TUC. We have the TUC making demonstration against racism. And actually this initiative came from the International Socialists, but I don't think they will admit this, but it came from us. And then the Transport Union make the proposal, and the TUC National, they make this demonstration. We have a lot of good things going on from below, but still the fascists are able to march, and the police are protecting them. They are very small. The problem is also that we are not confronting them. We have this idea about the Popular Front. We don't have crisis, but we have a lack of political clarity, which is a problem, and we need stronger organization to make this massive feeling and mood change to politics.
From Tower Hamlets. A couple of months ago, I went to a brilliant memorial with a guy called Mick Shaw, who started out as a young firefighter, and he was ex-president of the FBU. And one of his school friends said the first political thing Mick ever did in his life was when he was 15, in 1976, when he went to Lewisham to stop the National Front. And I think it's a generation of trade unionists who have grown up with that tradition because of what we've talked about, the way we've marked out opposition to Nazi. And I know Mick would have been delighted that on the 3rd of September we made sure that the EDL didn't step 1 foot inside Tower Hamlets. But people need to know that when you talk about the argument about actively confronting and stopping the BNP or using other methods, it's a very important argument. So people may know, suppose there was a ban on the EDL coming to Tower Hamlets. Well, you perhaps don't know what that ban meant in reality, what the police intended to do. They intended to marshal them in Liverpool Street, just outside the borough, march them in, and then place them in a car park above Sainsbury's, almost directly overlooking the East London Mosque. Now, when they would walk, with their banners, with their chants, if it looks like a march, if it sounds like a march, it is a march. And that's the problem with the argument about bans. And put simply, you cannot trust the police. You cannot trust the police. Bit about the United Front, because we brought together in Tower Hamlets a very broad alliance based a lot on people who've known each other a long time, who have got their roots in the community, right across the faith groups, LGBT, East London Mosque, a very important part, but also other faith groups. And we wanted our politicians involved. And I'll say here, I'm really glad to see Rania Khan, one of our councillors from Tower Hamlets. I welcome her to Marxism. I thank her for her role in opposing the EDL. We wanted to make sure that firstly we were solid and they came on our terms, not we came on their terms. I think that's important because what Martin described, once the ban's in place, the truth is most of the politicians wanted to say to us, don't mobilise. And we had to have an argument that said we were going to. That's important. I wanted to two just further arguments. One, the importance of uniting. See, the argument about the Labour Party, if they make cuts, you don't, two arguments. Firstly, Breivik. Who did Breivik go to murder? Yes. The young socialists, the Labour, and by the way, they're not just young socialists, they're at summer camp. They're the type of people who are going to go on to be MPs. They're the aristocracy of the Labour Party there. That's who for the Nazis, they have to destroy social democracy, and we stand with social democracy against the Nazis, not the other way round. But the second argument is about Germany. When Trotsky talked in the 30s about what you need to do to defeat the Nazis, he said the Communist Party had to unite with the Social Democrats. The Social Democrats, the same organisation who murdered Rosa Luxemburg. That was Trotsky's argument. Even the people who murdered the revolutionaries, you unite together with against the Nazis. I think it's an important argument for us today because these threats, 35 years ago, Lewisham, there'll be people of my generation who all our political lives, periodically, we've spent fighting the Nazis. And we have to do that. We have to do something more. We have to get rid of the conditions that create them in the first place. And that's why you need to be a socialist.
Actually stick to 2 minutes because otherwise people are not going to get in. Cheers.
The rise of racism, the far right and fascism is built into the crisis, and it's not going to go away even if there is a resurgence, and when there's a resurgence of social resistance and working class action. Of course that provides an alternative pole, but the experience of Greece, 20 general strikes, a rise of the left, already in a country which had the most extensive left in Europe, and yet still 7% for a party which is, well, there's not really that much neo about it, it's as Nazi as you could possibly get, short of a German, a Bavarian accent. And that means there has to be a specific political effort directed against fascism and also against racism. And I just wanted to pick up on what Martin and Weyman were saying. I work with Martin and Weyman in the steering committee officers group of UAF, and I think that that we are in a position, in a sense alone, to be able to extend UAF and wider organisation against racism and fascism. And I think there are some critical things that need to be done, rather than simply waiting for when the EDL march happens, because there's much more to be won and much more that we can do than simply responding to their agenda to where they choose to march. The first is, I think that we are in a position where we can take deeper into the mainstream because of various, I haven't got time to go through it, but various arguments in the trade union movement with other, what's happened to other formations which set themselves up allegedly against the BNP. We're in a position to win a much wider base for the Unite Against Fascism and for the orientation that we argue for, including deeper amongst parliamentarians. I mean, and that means, I think, sharpening some of the political arguments. When the brother from Bristol says that the police are going to the pub to insist the pub lets the EDL in, that's something which we can't simply say, well, that's what the police do for you, we all know the state and so on. That's something which we have to popularise and say, why the hell is Bristol Police doing that. We don't accept it, to expose the police officers who make that decision and so on. Secondly, we have to repopularise anti-racism in a way which is dynamic. See, fascism is different from racism, but what was the beauty of the experience in the late 70s? It was black and white unite and fight to smash the National Front. And in the course of directing against the fascists, we created an anti-racist climate. And I think we can do that in a way which provides, has Labour on board, but provides the conditions in which we can actually say some things that Labour don't say, which need to be said, about immigration, about the crisis, and about what the alternative is.
Is that the microphone? Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Rania Khan. I'm a local councillor in Tower Hamlets. Thanks, John, for those lovely words. First of all, I want to say I'm a Muslim and I'm a socialist, and I don't think the two clash at all. I got elected at the age of 23. I got elected at the age of 23 years of age, and I'm going to get a bit emotional here because I have a lot to give to, I am who I am because of the Socialist Workers' Party, and I got involved through Stop the War. So, you know, I owe a lot to Socialist Workers' Party, and of course, I'm very, very pleased to be here. Since we're talking about EDL, one thing for sure was that EDL could not step a foot into Tower Hamlets right at the end, where the police had allowed the coach to go through Whitechapel Road. Otherwise, they would not have been able to step a foot into Tower Hamlets, and that is because of the work that UAF did, the work that we as local politicians did, and very importantly, the local community did, to have our demonstrations, to have a barricade, to work with the police, and put pressure on the police as well. What I did personally was I made sure we spoke to every single youth centre. I visited about 5 or 6 youth centres myself, talking to young people to tell them that, because you know, young people are really fired up. They felt threatened that, you know, EDL were coming into their area, wanting to you know, destroy their community. So they were really angry. They were ready to fight. But I spoke to them. We had other councillors, other people in the community speaking to them, explaining to them, look, if you do anything, what the media will do, they will turn it around, and the Islamophobic media, what they will do, they'll turn it around and they'll blame it on you. They'll be like, look, EDL are having a peaceful protest, and here are a bunch of Muslim thugs who are trying to cause trouble. So they understood that concept. We opened up all the youth centres on the day. Every single youth centre was open until 12 o'clock. We did a football tournament to keep the young people engaged. This is how we achieved, and of course with UAF we were able to do that. EDL unfortunately have threatened to come back. Just like the previous speaker's dad, I tend to go on their website quite a lot as well. They have threatened to come back to Tower Hamlets because it was a massive defeat for them. It was a big blow on them, and they've threatened to come back. So I'm not going to speak anymore. But yeah, thank you very much, and I hope to see some of you there if they do come back to support us like you have done. And also, I was watching yesterday Catherine Balber Singh. She's the poster Tory girl for the Tory Conservative Party. For the free school. She was an ex-head teacher. She's a mixed-race woman. You know, she's the poster girl for the Tory party. And she said in one of her YouTube clips, "Oh, you know, I was a lefty back in the days when I was in Oxford, and you know, I flirted with the SWP. May I say this? That I am married to the SWP."
My comrades, some of you may know that I was attacked in Lewisham, and I thought I'd drawn the short straw when I was asked to make the financial appeal today. But in fact, it's not the short straw, it's really an honour and a privilege, and I would really like to pay tribute to people like Martin and Weyman for the courage they show, but also for the organisation. I have to say that it was all the messages of support and solidarity that actually moved me from a position of resignation and then equanimity to one of resilience, saying, you know, that we would have to be at Luton the next week. I would have been there anyway, but I couldn't because of the state of my eye. But the difficult part now is I want the team, if anyone tries to leave the room, to indulge in a bit of quantitative easing when people actually try to get to the doors. And I'm going to make an appeal for money in just a minute, but I did ask to make a political contribution when I spoke today. First of all, I want to say something about the attack in Lewisham. It's insignificant in terms of all the attacks that people have suffered, and I want to pay tribute to Harold up there, who was also attacked on that day. I want to say that it was a cowardly attack, but it was an opportunist attack. I've heard today, I think it was from Weyman, that we have had several of these attacks throughout the country, but I don't expect to see a whole lot of them. But we know that the situation can change rapidly. We've had the warning about the vote that Marine Le Pen got in France and about the rise of Golden Dawn in Greece. We know what we have to do. The other thing I want to say is I think we're absolutely right to put the emphasis on challenging Islamophobia and to say that, that in other places people have been weak on that. Because one of the things they said at Lewisham was, when we pointed out that they were racist and fascists, they said, we're not racist, we just hate Muslims. And that is a form of racism. There was a soldier actually on the radio this morning who was talking about racism in the army, because he was asked about how he was being treated as a Muslim in the army. But he just concentrated on the racism he experienced, and he experienced that racism because he was a Muslim. Now, the question of money. This morning I listened to Pat Stack, always very amusing. And I think it's true to say that if you can't give some money and put some money in the buckets this afternoon, then you must either be part of the posh Tory brigade, or you must be absolutely piss poor. And I know that there are some people who are very poor. But if you are very poor and you haven't got any money on you, well, an IOU will do. Put it in the bucket, put your postcode in it, or your contact address. I've got the Unite Against Fascism leaflet here, which is also a very useful leaflet because it outlines what we're doing about the formation of the English Freedom Party and other things that are going on. But it also puts levels of contributions that you should make through standing orders, like you start off at £5 and £7, so I'm not asking for too much. If you're only thinking of giving £2, then you can double your money. If you're only thinking of giving £5, give £10. £10 isn't a very attractive looking note. The £20 note is much more glossy. So I want to see the notes going into the bucket. Don't be afraid to put coins in. But remember, Weyman has still got to speak. We want to be able to hear him. And we want people to be concentrating on what's being said. So please, I want your money. When I've been on the Stop the War demonstrations, there's a bit of irony here, so I hope you take it as irony. I'm not afraid to ask for people's pensions. I'm not afraid to ask for people's benefit money. I'm not afraid to ask for people's student grants, but you don't have them anymore. Your student loans. So please, give generously. Organisation, propaganda, agitation is essential, and it requires money. So put your money in the buckets.
Thanks very much for what people have said. And in terms of what we immediately face, I want to make a couple of points about some other things. I went to an LMHR gig inside Walthamstow that was full of young people who we didn't particularly know. And I'm talking about in terms of the mobilisation to stop fascists. Part of it is reaching to the other parts that we don't normally reach in terms of bringing people together. If you look back at the 1970s, one of the things that broke the fascists is that we won the ideological high ground in terms of the way that we had Rock Against Racism and the way we're building Love Music and Racism today. In Barnsley, I remember that the BNP turned up at the Barnsley gig inside the town and said this is one of the worst days in our lives, because they saw the majority of a white city, really, the majority of people turning up and saying that they were going towards the gig, and it broke some of the back in terms of the way that they felt. I didn't go to the Thirds Carnival inside East London, but I remember the National Front mobilising for it and being demoralised by the march that went past there. And I want to say the anniversary of Love Music Hate Racism is an important method in terms of being able to undermine what the Nazis are doing, because really it wins the hearts and minds of young people, and it wins the hearts and minds of other people to be able to break the idea that they can become part of a mass organisation. So when we're talking about building, it's about digging those roots in to the different communities that are there. There's an anniversary concert coming up which I'd like people to go to. People are talking about Bristol and they're talking about Tower Hamlets. The truth is, if we want to stop the EDL, the truth is they go to towns multiple times. When they went to, part of the way of breaking the EDL was that they went to Tower Hamlets twice before and got turned away. In other words, there was organisation started to be built on the ground way before they actually went there. But there was something else about the organisation that was important. When we met with the police, they said, we're going to talk to the trade unions. They said they were going to talk to a man called Alex Kenny. And they said he will listen to us. They said they were going to talk to John McLaughlin from Unison. And that they said that if they'd listened, that, you know, they would get a hearing from Unison because they said they've always had a close relationship with local government workers in terms of what they're trying to do. The truth is that actually, because there already were revolutionary trade unions there, or trade unions that supported us, the chance was to be able to begin to break them. The other thing about fighting the, you know, people have got up and thanked me and Martin, whatever it is. The truth is, that's not what's protected us, actually. What's protected us is the number of people and how well organised they're on the ground. When we got arrested in Bolton, the fact that they'd already built some, and Manchester had some kind of routes, meant that they could get their trade union, they could get the leader of the TUC to ring up and say, why have you locked them up? And that helped to get us out quicker than being there a longer time. And the reason why I put an emphasis on that is that when in Bristol, if you think telling people they're not going to lock them up is not going to have an impact, it is. It actually is going to have an impact unless we go out and put the counter-argument about numbers and talk about bringing people together. And actually, it's the art of being able to do that that's going to make the difference that shapes the future. But unless people have those networks, they can't change anything. In Brighton, the truth is, because the students worked with the people who describe themselves as autonomists, they were able to bring people together to discuss how do we actually stop the Nazis despite the fact that we've got differences. In Waltham Forest, Stella Creasy has rang up and says, I want a ban. That's what I actually want. I want to be part of your organisation, but I also want a ban. If you think, it's not easy trying to keep people in the same organisation when they say something which you actually don't agree with. The only way to do that is to find a point in which you can hold them and then talk about a strategy that will really work. That's not easy, because they invite you to come to Parliament to talk about it in a big kind of church-like place, and they actually are bigger and they're stronger than what you have. The reason why they listen to us is because they look at the things that actually work, the things that actually have stopped the EDL. We've got a task in front of us, because I want us to just quickly point why that's important. When the EDL launched, its aim was to bring a demonstration of 10,000 people on the city, in a city, at one time. They said if we could get 10,000 people in one city, the left will not be able to stop us, and we're not sure if the police will be able to stop us. So far, they've not been able to do that because they've had Breivik, we've broken them up by bringing different alliances together. My warning is that when you look at Cameron talking about getting rid of housing benefit, removing all rights to people, whatever it is, we don't know how far that will go. We have a strategy called a shield, which is UAF, it brings together different people, and a sword. And I think you need both of them. You see, I think if you don't mobilise around the TUC demonstration and bring people in, I like going on UAF demonstrations, but sometimes I'm worried about the numbers. I would like to go on a UAF demonstration that had 10,000 people on it, and that reverse what the Nazis say, that we actually do it the other way around. And we've got the potential to do that if we understand that we have to build an organisation like that, because what the other side is trying to do. The key isn't kind of what I describe as people who are at the front. What matters is the branch secretary in the organisation, the person in the community organisation, like Rania, the routes that they've actually been able to build. Because otherwise, how do you explain Bradford? Because in Bradford, the majority of people want to stop the EDL. We went to meetings of over 1,000 people saying, I want to stop the EDL. And then, when the day came, we went out there and there was 300 of us. And to be honest, that's not something which we want to repeat. I think we have to do two things. We have to win politically so people feel confident. You know what they say to Muslims? If you go out, look what we did last time. We locked people up for 500 years. You step outside your door and see what we'll do to you. I think by bringing together political support and the fact that you're going to have large numbers of people, we can begin to break down the argument. But we have to have a bigger UAF if we're going to be able to do that. And we have to go through twists and turns. The final thing, I know I just want to say that, you know, the first time I saw the National Front, I was 7 years old, I was hit over the head with a lump hammer, and that brought some sense to me in terms of saying that there's got to be some kind of change. It's been followed by the BNP, and that's been followed by the EDL and the BFP, Golden Dawn, and all these different types of organisation. I have to step back, and part of my opinion says that there's got to be something that's better than this. There has got to be something that's better than this, a resurgence of fascism and racism at periodic times inside our society. I want to stop the fascists, but I also think we have to have a society that begins to make sure that they don't exist. And I think that's the reason why it's important that there's an SWP branch. To be honest, sometimes I went to Dewsbury, and there isn't an SWP branch there. I'll tell you, the fact there isn't an SWP, there's no criticism of the people there, the fact there isn't an SWP branch there made it harder to actually build. I'm not arguing that if you build an SWP branch, the EDL are finished, right? That's the end of the BNP. We've got a branch meeting on Wednesday, they're finished, right? I'm not arguing that at all. I'm arguing that part of building a leadership that can actually shape things, that does matter, and the network around us. In the 21st century, I think we either fight for a socialist revolution, or we will see people like Golden Dawn and fascists actually begin to challenge us. But we're here first. They're the ones that are running. They're the ones that have been defeated so far. So we've got a chance, I believe. We get the first bite of the cherry, as Daniel Gearing put it in terms of anti-fascism. We can win this battle, provided we start off by winning both battles. Stopping the EDL, mobilising against them, but also fighting for something better in society in terms of capitalism is what's producing this. It's a crisis of capitalism that's producing it. We have to have an alternative to that. And that's why I'd like people to join Socialist Workers' Party so I can retire.